students are cheating, right? Of course, students have been cheating since the beginning of school. Of course, it's just
I
more
would be cheating.
sophisticated now.
I would be
Oh,
cheating. I raise
and
my
they
hand.
are, right? You're not, but are you cheating or are you using your resources, right? Like, what is it? And so
Well, right,
that's
right.
the other conversation.
What makes us so special? And why isn't AI just simply going to replace us all? That's why I'm sitting down with educators, researchers, and practitioners to have an open and honest discussion about the human impact of AI. I'm Doug Atkinson, and join me for the Human Conversation. Courtney Bock, welcome to the Human Conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you have been very participant in a lot of the things that we're doing at Insight Jam. You've been on our panels, and you've been an incredible expert perspective that I wanted to explore a little deeper with a long form conversation. I know you are an AI implementation specialist. You're also in the classroom. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and what you're excited about.
Yeah, you're right. I'm in the classroom. This is my 16th year as an educator. I split my day. So I do AI implementation for my district in the morning, and then I'm a K-5 library and technology teacher in the afternoons. And so I've had that role for 5 years, but prior to that, I've taught first grade and worked for a homelink program with our homeschool programs out in our Valley district. I taught full day kindergarten for a couple of years. I've worked with and taught art with middle school and high school and ELA. And so I've kind of been over the 16 years, been all over the place in education. And then early on in my career, I actually helped build AI and train AI agents and did train chatbots for enterprise accounts. Really, in 2010 to 2012, I worked for a company called Next IT and was a natural language model analyst for them and worked on projects like AskGen for Alaska Airlines and Sergeant Star for the Army's recruiting. So I've kind of got this like in the last couple of years, things have kind of like come together. My two worlds have come together with AI stuff and with education, and it's just been a really exciting time to see all that happening at once. And it's been a little bit of a wild ride, but there's some really cool things happening. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Well, and so we've been having a lot of conversations as we've been redirecting Insight Jam toward this human conversation around the impact of AI on the world of work and also in the world of education, among a bunch of other impacts that are going to happen. But the one conversation that has gotten more feedback and more interaction is this one around education and how AI is going to impact education. And so I couldn't be happier to be talking to you about it, because what we're seeing in some of the other conversations is there is a massive race right now among just a huge amount of well-funded ed tech companies trying to get themselves into the classroom and trying to take advantage of this moment and get, in front of the kids. What are you seeing in terms of, at that kind of ground level and having the perspective of having worked on the other side? How do you see this starting to come together? I mean, how are classrooms, or how are school systems, I should say, how should they be thinking about, reviewing, critiquing, understanding all the buying options?
Well, you're right. There's a ton of tools out there, and not all are created equal. I feel like there's a new tool or 10 every week. And it's been interesting over the last 2 to 3 years to see which tools have survived and which ones haven't. And like I'll go to I was at ASU GSV, and it was interesting, which is a big conference in San Diego, a big ed tech conference, and it was interesting to see one year who was still there, and then the next year who was not. So who survived and who didn't. When we're talking about it's so important because we're talking about kids, right? We're talking about students, and we're not just talking about the data and privacy, and that's one whole conversation, but we're talking about our children, which, as a parent, like that's a huge deal for me, and it should be for everybody, right? And so it's really important that we're being very careful and thoughtful about how school districts are vetting these tools for students and how we're training teachers to use them and what we're putting in front of students. I mean, because these companies want to make money. At the end of the day, they want to make money, right? They're a business, and I understand that, but it's really important that there is a adoption process, that there are multiple stakeholders involved when we're choosing tools, that there's pilots, and that student voice is there, there's parent voice in there, there's teacher voice, administrator voice, and we're looking at the whole picture, not just what's the latest, biggest, fanciest, who's the biggest company, who's got the best deal. It can't be what's the cheapest thing. It needs to be what's the best thing, because cheap is not always the best. And sometimes in public education, we want the best deal, and the best deal is not always the best thing. So
Well, I mean, let's talk about that for a second, about the kind of array of AI available to kids, because you're right, there is going to be kind of the professionally selected, certified, integrated. There has to be, right? Every school system is going to have to come to grips with selecting some sort of AI.
Well, the kids are already using it, right?
Tool, but right, to my point, it's there's all this other stuff where they're, theoretically, I mean, if I were a kid, I'd be all over ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and Grok and whatever else is out there.
Yeah.
Helping me do, my work, papers. And I mean, there's just no way I would not be using this, and knowing a little bit about, I'm older, but knowing a little bit about how my kids were using technology, there are kids that are pretty far down in age who are all over the free tools that are available right now, and they're interacting, and they're becoming incredibly sophisticated users, more so than probably some of the teachers that they have.
They can, and I use AI with third graders. Like, it's been an amazing, and I don't go lower than third graders because I don't think it's developmentally appropriate. But third graders, fourth graders, they, with some really great guided scaffolding and teacher guardrails and monitoring, can do some incredibly powerful things with AI that they couldn't otherwise do without it. And it's been there. I mean, there's tons of examples that I could share, but they can do amazing things. And yeah, if I was a student, like you said, I would be using AI to help me study. I'd be using AI to help me edit my papers. Like, knowing I can't use the AI on the test on Friday, I'd be using like Notebook LM to do all my studying things for me. Like, it's such a powerful tool if I was a student now. And I think in a way, I mean, I still am. I'm always learning and always doing, and I use AI to help me learn in my adult and professional life. But yeah, it's an incredibly powerful tool. And students are cheating, right? Students have been cheating since the beginning of school. Of course, it's just more sophisticated now.
I would be cheating. I raise my hand.
Are. Right? You're not, but are you cheating, or are you using your resources, right? Like, what is it? And so that's the other conversation.
Well, and this is, and so, well, and what are the implications, right? I mean, none of us wanted to write a term paper. Nobody ever wants to write a term paper. I remember kids, when I was in college, you could basically rent a grad student to write your term paper for you if you were so inclined. I mean, and a lot of people were doing that. I mean, nobody wants to write a term paper. Nobody wants to do long form homework. Everybody wants the easiest path to getting the grade, to get to the next grade, to move, through this thing that we're all required to go through, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one could argue that most kids don't want to go to school. So you're trying to get through it as fast and as efficiently, to put it one way, as possible. But there are implications to not learning it if you are just trying to hack your way through.
Right.
And so what are some of those? I mean, what is your concern with regard to kids kind of getting right now unfettered access to answers?
That they're not, it's like not like, if you don't know the rules, you can't break the rules. Have you heard that? Like, we talk about it in art, or like if you're learning how to write poetry, it's like you got to learn all the rules and then you can break all the rules, right? So if you don't know the rules, you can't break them. And then there's part of that like that struggle of learning how the foundations work. Like, yeah, we can use calculators, but do you actually know how it's working in the background? So I think there's an opportunity to redesign and look at how we're doing assessments and why we're doing assessments the way we're doing them and why we're having papers, writing papers the way we are. And then but we don't want to lose that creative process of writing because man, there's some great writers. And as a librarian and as a person who loves literature and loves to read, like I don't want to read books that are written by AI. I don't. I want to read really well done literature. And but I think there's a balance, and I think because humans are humans and we value that connection, there are people that are like, no, I'm not going to do that. I want the struggle of being a writer, of being a mathematician, and being an artist and having that authentic voice and those authentic works coming through. So there's people that are choosing not to do those, to use AI, which I think is great. Now, can we get students to do that? To not offload their cognitive thing? I hope so. But then if they're offloading their work to AI, then is that really the right way to do the assessments and do the work? So where's the balance? And I don't have the right answer for that.
Well, so
But
and this is why sometimes I think I'm probably
it's
the
hard.
worst person to be like hosting this conversation, because I was one of the kids who would say, "Am I going to need this later on in life? Am I going to need these math?" It's like I had calculators and
Right.
whatever, right? It's like, am I gonna need to know math? And, I'm not. I don't plan to be an accountant or whatever my justification was for.
Mhm.
Do I really need this? Am I going to need to know this? And I wonder if that's now not only extended from, do I need to know math to do I need to know how to write? Do I need to know how to write? Or can this thing just be my, you know, my
Yeah.
court
I
court
I I don't think writing's gonna go
transcriber
away.
of my thoughts?
Yeah. I don't think the art of writing is gonna go away because I mean I use AI to help me write, but ultimately I go back and I'm editing. 'Cause I'm like, oh God, that doesn't sound like me, or that's not how that is, and that's not how I write, and that's not doing. But on the other hand, I know that because I didn't grow up writing with AI, and I have an authentic voice that I know because I went through that struggle of not using AI to do it all. So yeah, I don't have a definitive answer for you on that or how that's gonna look. I think it's a hard question to answer, but in my profession, in a professional situation, there are jobs they're requiring people to use AI. And so when I'm sending off an email to somebody, like I'm using AI if it's not a huge high stakes situation and I needed to edit something. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like this is a low stakes thing. But if I'm going to write a blog post or if I'm going to write on my Substack, like I'm going to use AI to help me and edit, but I'm not going to use AI to write the whole thing. Like I'm going to have it edit for grammar and punctuation and make sure, I'm not making huge editing mistakes, but I'm not going to have it write the whole thing for me.
No, no, I appreciate that, but I find that AI is a great sounding board
Yeah.
for well, here's something that I've written. What are some other things that we can write around that? And I say we because it's like me and you, ChatGPT, me and you, Gemini, we're going to do this together. Like, what are some of the other angles of attack I can take here
Mhm.
around this topic? And this is the siren song of AI, is it is incredibly competent at that.
Yeah.
It comes back with ideas, and you can't help but be impressed. Like, I would not have had that idea. That
Mhm.
is a great idea.
Yeah.
And
And then you
and
take it and run.
and you say, let's explore that,
Yeah.
expand
Mhm.
on that. And it's
Yep.
like, you bet, and off
Yep.
it goes. And it's incredibly seductive in what it does, because
Yeah.
it like whispers these great thoughts, and you're like, "You know what? I don't think anybody else could have helped me with that." It's almost like you figured it out in a way
Mhm.
that I couldn't even figure it out.
Not for the cost of what AI cost you, right? You would have had to pay a lot more for that.
Well, that I mean, this is the rub, right? There's that marketing consultant or that content consultant or that whatever,
Mhm.
hourly person would help you
Yeah.
with
That speechwriter or whoever.
speechwriter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, speechwriters.
I was listening to a podcast from AI EDU. They've got a great podcast series with their CEO, and they'd interviewed this college professor, and his name is escaping me at the moment. But he requires his students to use AI, and he does an interesting thing with it, he has them write a paper and or he has them do put their assignment into multiple LLMs, and then the writing assignment he has them do is compare across the LLMs about, because they're going to be wrong, right? There's going to be things about them that are not correct, and so he has them do a compare and contrast between the different outputs from each LLM, and then they take that information that they've gotten and they create something new from it. So the writing is not the final product. It's a whole it's part of the process. And so the final product, they have to create, like, he gives them some options. So they have to create like a podcast or a comic book or some sort of individual project that AI can't create. So that AI is still part of the process, but it's not the final product. Which I think is a really cool way to do that, and it's a little more authentic, but it's still using the technology in a way that's helpful, but it's being critical and it's helping with critical thinking skills. I mean, we're talking about college students, so they're using it anyways, so you might as well put it as part of your assignment. I thought it was brilliant. It was a brilliant way to incorporate something that they're already doing, but creating really authentic learning experiences.
Well, so let's talk about let's get back to the classroom and the kids, because
Yeah.
there is no question in my mind that kids are going to use this to cheat, and maybe that's not the right word, but to get things done quicker,
Yeah.
more efficiently, right? All the things they don't want to have to do, and obviously, in the current structure of education, it's one to many. And while it's grade based, there's lots of levels of competence within any one classroom and any
Yeah.
one grade level.
Mhm.
And so now you have the ability potentially to delineate what each kid can get for an educational experience, maybe a personalized educational experience, to the point where
Yeah.
the way the subject is taught is relevant to the interests of that kid versus the interests of another kid. If one kid's a
Yep.
gamer and another kid's a jock, or whatever the,
Mhm.
click-based, interest
Yeah.
levels are. And so how do you see that starting to is that where you think technology is going to end up, in kind of like hyper personalization as opposed to kind of the traditional delivery methods?
I think AI is an opportunity for that. And I want to preface that by saying I don't want to see children sitting in front of computers their whole school day. Like, that's not what I want to see.
Yep.
But I think it's so differentiating for all students in the classroom, meeting the needs of every student, every learner in the classroom is a monumental task for a teacher when you've got between 20 and 35 students in your classroom. It's nearly impossible. Like, it's impossible to do it well. Let's put it that way. And it's something that teachers have always struggled with. And as more things are being put on teachers' plates, and it's an impossible task. And I see AI as a way to help with that. I don't know what that's going to look like in 3 to 5 years from now, but there's teachers, and I see it all the time, that are already starting to use AI to help make that differentiation for students easier. So an example, there's um, a second grade teacher in one of our buildings, and they very common practice. She does individual or small reading groups for students, right? So she groups students by their reading level, and she has a really high level of readers, and they always get done with their stuff early, and they're reading texts that are way higher than the rest of the class, and it's always a challenge to find text that's challenging, but that's also age appropriate. Okay. So yeah, right. Because we don't want inappropriate text, but we also want to challenge these students. So she's using AI to write this small group of 5 kids individual booklets based on their interests and at their reading level, and including vocabulary words that they need to know. And she's customizing it. Now, she can do this work herself. She's a very competent teacher. She has a master's degree. She's been teaching for 17 years. She's an incredibly brilliant person. Does she have the time to do it? Yeah, but she doesn't want to do it at home at 7 o'clock at night, and she doesn't want to do it on her own. So she's using AI to help write these booklets for these students, and they love it. They can't wait to get finished with their required core instructions so they can move on to their individual booklets that she's created for them. And it's really developmentally appropriate because they're not actually interacting with the AI, but they are reaping the benefits of a teacher who's using it to differentiate instructions for them. And on the opposite side of that, she can do that for the younger kids who can't access the curriculum because they're not there. They don't have the skills. So they still need some of those foundational skills, and the core curriculum is beyond where they're at. So she can do the differentiation for these kids in a much more efficient way, and they're not sitting in front of a computer for 3 hours. So that those things, I see the relief and the taking things off of teachers' plates, and it's giving me some hope that we can be more effective and efficient educators.
Yeah, this is another thing that's fascinating to me is the organic ideas that are bubbling up out of the professional layer of teaching that says, this isn't something we should be denying. It's something we should be leveraging
Yeah.
in on behalf of the kids rather than being fearful that it's going to destroy, all that we hold sacred with regard to
Mhm.
education. And there's no, and it feels like it's a very organic, and that's very organic right now that
Yep.
you have the second grade teacher in one
Yep.
particular class or school system that has come up with a very clever idea. And, I'm now just hearing about it. You heard about it through this organic kind of
Mhm.
observation, but nobody else, a lot of people would love to know that. And so there feels like there needs to be kind of a central sharing area or
And
forum
there
or
is kind of
something
within
like
the
that.
teacher community, there are, like, I mean, there's not like a one hub. I mean, there's platforms and teachers are sharing things, TikTok and Instagram and any social media, there's teachers sharing this, that, and the other thing, and AI hacks and blah, blah, blah. There's all that. And then there's this kind of this organic thing that happens even just within buildings or in districts themselves. And teachers like, hey, how'd you do that? I'm like, oh, let me show you this AI thing I did. And they're like, wait, 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 no, no, no. Okay, so hey, so-and-so's doing this cool thing.
Yeah.
And then it's just there's this real grassroots thing happening, and I think that's been such a huge factor with education and AI. It's been pretty
Well,
cool.
so I always say, or I have been saying lately, that this revolution will not come in the form of software developers. It's going to come in the form of salespeople. That the salespeople are going to show up with these fully baked things, and you're probably already starting to see them at the school level that are going to be too well developed and too smart not to implement, and quite frankly, to the benefit of the kids. What are kids going to start to miss, or what is the fear if we start to implement all this technology and again, there's going to be kind of a knee jerk reaction that if we don't do it, we're going to fall behind and
Mhm.
and and eventually I could see alternative educational paths starting to develop outside of the kind of traditional established school systems that are going to compete for kind of an accelerated path for kids because the end game is going to be different than what is the traditional end game. But I guess my bigger question right now is what is the potential that kids start to miss? What is the early development threat with regard to how kids learn right now and versus how they could potentially learn if they were just in front of a screen getting kind of, high-end personalized learning?
I'm a huge my national board certification is in early childhood, and I'm a parent of a very young child, and as a person who's spent a lot of time with lots of really young children, so primary, so like second grade and younger, the normal things of childhood, play, right? Outside, interaction with each other, hands-on learning, those are so foundational. And you can go look tons of studies that show how important that is, right? Face-to-face interaction.
And are
Um,
we losing that now just by the sheer fact that kids now have handheld devices in their face and
yeah,
they're watching TikTok and
yeah,
Instagram and
yeah,
whatever? Are we losing
yep,
that kind of
yep.
tactile, carbon-based
We call them the
interaction?
iPad kids. As a parent, I know it's hard. Parenting is hard, and it's really easy to stick your phone or an iPad in front of your kid. But it's very obvious when children come to school and they are on an iPad all day. We know which kids those are. It's very obvious. They
And
really
they aren't able to do that in the class. Can you see them fidgeting and like just
oh
kind of
it
like
the
withdrawals?
Yeah, no, it's yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely. They're going through this dopamine withdrawal, and just they're not getting that instant gratification, that instant hit all day long, and so they're coming, and we're talking kids that are 5, 6, 7 years old, like children, so they don't have the ability to emotionally regulate, and so when they are in front of a screen all day, they're being babysat, and they come to, and then we're like, oh. Go to school. Here, no more iPad. You're so that's this cold withdrawal, an immediate detox, and then they have no control. The emotions are all over the place. They have no ability to regulate. No adult has taught them how to regulate because we are not born knowing how to regulate our emotions. That's something that our parents teach us, right? That's something that we learn through contact, through time, through engaging face to face. And so when we pop a screen in front of a kid all the time, they don't get that interaction. They're getting that immediate hit all day, all the time.
This is
And so like
generation one of a massive social experiment that is unregulated. I mean, the fact that we've allowed technology companies to present this dopamine release system into these apps, and then we just hand them over to kids, and we're just ill-equipped. I would argue that parents just are ill-equipped to realize what they're doing because they didn't realize it was a threat. Nobody told them.
and nobody told them, they don't know, and it's easy, right? It's super easy. It's especially if you have a challenging kiddo. Parenting is hard in general, but it's harder for parents that are trying to do the best they can, right? And so when you have if you have a challenging kiddo and you're at a restaurant and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Here's my phone. Here's my phone. Here's my phone. And now you do it every single time. And so, but the consequences of that are bigger, right? So now they're at school and now the teachers have this child who they're trying to educate, but they're going through this screen detox, and so they're not operating at a level where they're ready to learn, and so that's a challenge for us, right, when we're trying to educate kids. And anyway, so I could talk about that for a long time, and if you there's lots of studies that are coming out about that. There's books, you can read The Anxious Generation, you can read Screenagers, there's all of that stuff
Well,
out there.
it's a compounding problem at this point because and look, in fairness to parents, I mean, I was when my kids were little, screens weren't as big a thing,
Right.
and so I remember telling servers when we're at a restaurant, it's like you have 20 minutes to get some food out here. If you think you can't make that, just put it in a box because we're leaving.
We
There's
gotta
no
go.
way I can. I don't have. There's no way you can because when you go into a busy restaurant and you see how long it takes for them to come to take your order, it's like I have to set expectations. Like I got 2 boys who
Yeah,
are young
we
and
need to
they are
move
going
this
to be
along.
crawling over the booth. And there's no way I can do anything about that. I don't have at the time we didn't have
Yeah.
screens at the table. So I totally respect the fact that like
No, it's hard. We don't
handing
do
them a screen
screens.
so you could have a
Yes.
meal with your family
Yeah.
is not a bad pacifier.
No, I
Um,
get it. It's so hard. It's so hard. And yeah,
but
sometimes
it's it becomes addictive because you're right. There's a chemical problem involved here, the
Mhm.
dopamine release
Yeah,
issue, and then you're off to the races feeding that beast and with the monkey on this kid's
right.
back
I
for
mean, and I catch myself scrolling, right? I do that, but I'm an adult and I can go, "Oh gosh, okay, right?" But kids can't regulate that. And so that's a challenge. And then, but then how do we balance that with not ignoring technology? So this is my own personal thing. I don't think children should be doing all kinds of screens and all kinds of stuff. Um in like second grade, they're starting to get on computers. First grade, we're doing a little bit of computer work, but like we're talking like super controlled, really regulated 20-30 minutes. Like, this is how you turn it on. This is how you take care of your devices. This is how a mouse works. Because these are the computer, this is how you sign onto your computer. This is how you get out. And super controlled, really monitored. And okay, let's put it away. This is how we plug it in. Just very basic device care when they're starting to get into like third grade is when we're starting to use the computer as a tool, right? This is how we're using this to learn. Instead of learning how to use a computer, we're using the computer to learn, which is a different thing, right? And then as they get older, that's just the expectation. So we're getting to middle school and high school, and they have to use computers. That's just the world we live in. But balancing that tech use with going outside, playing your sports, doing all of those things, and having the balance of technology. Technology is great. It's wonderful. It does amazing things. It's an incredible learning tool. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be using it. I'm not saying kids shouldn't learn how to do it. I'm saying that we need to introduce it as in a developmentally appropriate time, in a developmentally appropriate way, and have balance and guardrails, and make sure kids are learning how to use it responsibly. And as adults, we can model that. It's hard, but it doesn't mean that it's not good work. And we should be able to do that and help our kids learn how to do it themselves. And we need to model it, because kids mimic the things that their adults in their life do.
My sense is that the adults in their life are going to start to be genuinely concerned about what their kids' future is going to look like. I mean, obviously, K through 12 is one element of this whole thing where you kind of, it's a little hands off for a parent, right? I'm just going to put them into school, and they're going to go through the classes, and I'm going to go to the teacher meetings, and it's all kind of all sorted out. And, the game there is, hopefully maybe they play a sport, or they join a club, or they learn an instrument, or something outside of that is fulfilling and further developing them. But ultimately, the goal for a lot of parents, not all parents, is where are they going to wind up professionally? Are they going to go off to college or university? Are they going to go into a trade? Are they going to whatever it is next? I mean, I think every parent wants to give their kid the best launch that they can. And so
Absolutely.
toward the end of that school cycle, most parents, I would argue, are saying, okay, let's start thinking about jobs and, summer jobs and what gets you excited and so forth. And when they do look down that path and they start to see this AI pervasive, future, a lot of people are saying, well, what kids are going to need, and maybe parents will start to recognize this, although I don't think they do yet, are these soft skills, right? What's going to allow you to succeed regardless of your interest in whatever it is, some sort of trade or some sort of other kind of occupational therapy or occupational path or some sort of profession, is you're going to need these particular soft skills, right? Conscientiousness or empathy or whatever the creative, problem solving. I mean, I think there's some big five that I should be familiar with that I am not.
Yeah.
But my bigger question is, talking to someone like you, can you teach that? Can you teach empathy? Can you
try,
teach
right?
conscientiousness? Is that teachable to kids?
Well, it's a skill, right? We can teach it. We can try to teach it.
Do schools try to do that right now?
Yeah.
Are there like thoughts around? I mean, I'm sure there's not, well, we're going to send you to empathy class, like typing.
No,
It's like,
I mean, no.
but is there, like, how do you do that? How do you teach things like that?
So a lot of schools, and I can't speak for every school district across the country, but a lot of schools have what we call SEL, so social emotional learning curriculum that they implement. Mostly, I can speak more from an elementary lens, but then there's also like middle school and high school usually do some sort of like character traits and weekly, character traits of the month or character traits of the week. And they try to do things through different leadership stuff and talking about those skills that you mentioned. And when kids get involved in things like DECA or debate or ASB or things like that, those are part of the core of what students are learning as they're going through those courses. And so while it's not like its own standalone class, those type of soft skills are really implemented intertwined in the learning of those classes.
Well, so everybody tells me that is going to be one of the salvations for humans is soft skills, that the way that we're going to survive what's coming in terms of the great threat of replacement is being able to kind of amplify our soft skills that AI won't be able to replicate. And
Yeah.
so should there be empathy class? Should we make kids go to empathy class or conscientiousness class, or like
Well, I think
almost like back in the old finishing school, right? It's like, these are manners. You're going to learn your manners.
maybe we should
Literally.
have that class. We should have that class. The
Well, right,
manners.
manners. I mean, honestly, I mean, should there be? I mean, could you even see it? Is it even possible?
Uh, I don't know if an empathy class is possible. You might have to rebrand that one a little bit. But I would love to
It's
see a
one of the.
manners.
I'm pretty sure it's one of the big five, whatever
You
those
know,
things are.
I would love to see come back. This is what I would love to see come back. I would love to see and my mom's a retired home ec teacher, so this is why I feel a little bit strong about this.
Sure.
I would love to see independent living come back. So learning how to live on your own, financial literacy,
Financial
okay?
literacy, great one.
Financial literacy, which was a class that my mom taught as a home ec teacher. Independent living, they learned how to cook, which was great. So the financial literacy, child development. So learn how to do, because most people become parents, right? A lot of people have become parents and learning all that stuff. In those class, those are some pretty basic life skills. And like, let's have a class where you put your phone down. Let's talk about, how do we interact with people? How do you order at a restaurant? How do you interview for a job? How do you apply for a mortgage? How do you apply for a loan? Like all of
What
those
is a
basic.
mortgage? Right,
What is a
exactly.
mortgage? How does interest rate work? How does
Right.
all of those things? How do you, like, we're looking to buy a tractor. My husband and I are like, how do you do that? How do you figure out what's going to work and what's the interest rates and how you're going to find this and how you're going to do that, and buying it in Idaho versus buying it in Washington, and then like licensing and all those things that we don't get taught in school, but are really basic things that you have to learn on your own, that are valuable skills. Because I see kids who can't interact, like they can't order at restaurants, they can't talk on the phone, like they don't want to leave a message, they like texting, and like let's put our technology down and work on those human face-to-face interactions, which I
Well,
think would be cool.
can a screen help them there? I mean, I know. I mean, you mentioned TikTok. I mean, I know there are a lot of very popular TikTok accounts that are basically life skills accounts that are saying, here's how you tie a tie, or here's how you,
Yeah.
do whatever it is that you haven't been taught how to do that you need to do. How
Yeah,
to
I
fix
think there's
whatever.
room for technology to help with that. Which is a little bit weird to be like, oh, I'm going to use AI to help me do an interview, prepare for an interview. But it's handy, right? Pretty cool.
Well,
So
so why do you think home ec went away, or the all those kind of classes that you were, not all those were, I think, established classes, but the idea that there were kind of, I remember in my year, they definitely had home ec, and
yeah,
they had shop, and
yeah,
you were kind
that's
of pushed into these things that you should consider. Whether you ended up being, a welder, didn't matter. You learned how to weld, or you did things that you would never do in any other way,
mhm.
and forced to kind of, deal with your kind of clumsy incompetence around power tools or whatever it was.
Right. Yeah. I don't know all the history about why all those things faded. I'm sure it has something to do with money and funding, and different priorities. It's probably different for every district and every state. But it was sad the day that I saw the sewing machines being sold at the district auctions. That was a big bummer. And then the day that the shop teacher, he retired, and they no longer needed shop, and they got rid of all of the stuff and they sold all that too. And I think it's a shame, because those classes are so vital for some students, and for the students who maybe aren't going to go into technology, who don't want to sit at a desk. And that's that human piece, right? That you guys are so focused on. When technology is great and amazing and wonderful, it can help us do our jobs, and maybe it does help those people in the trades do the administrative tasks. But ultimately, those are the things that you can't replicate with AI, that you can't replicate with technology. Somebody who can weld an amazing thing. Like that's the cool, they've got an incredible skill. Somebody who can paint, somebody who can sew clothing that's not manufactured in China and gonna fall apart in 3 wears. Like, I remember people used to, when I was little, you got made fun of if your mom made your clothes. I would love now if my mom custom made my clothes. Like that would be amazing. Those are the cool things that technology can't replace, that I think those, it would be cool to see those classes and those things come back. And we do see it a little bit coming back, not in public education, but in private things. People are teaching children, young kids, high schools, middle school students, even adults, how to do some of those things that we've gotten rid of in public education, but they're paying for it out of pocket.
Those are the things that, are lead to a fulfilling life. I mean, being able to fix things and build things. I mean, I spent a lot of years, this is great therapy when you have little kids, to be able to go to the garage and, and go build something and get away from it all. But I always kind of use this scenario for these conversations, because this is the thing that troubles me the most. And that is the kid who's currently in 6th grade, the 12-year-old in 6th grade, who has had access to this, may not have teachers who are maybe as proactive as some of the ones that you've mentioned. And they are using it to cheat effectively, but it's working.
Yeah, they're getting away with it.
They're getting away with it. And nobody's really monitoring it, because in the end, to a large degree in some of these school systems, there's a certain kind of bureaucratic, laissez-faire, whatever. We're just going to cycle them through. Not to be too negative there, but I think there's a kind of a hands off. There's not much we can do. The system is the system, and I can't. I can only do so much as a single teacher in this kind of. And I have to get the grades, and I have to get the. And if the kids are using it to kind of cheat their way along, you know what? I'm getting the grades, but my bigger thing is that kid has got 6 more years of this technology before they're 18.
Yeah.
And we've seen what the first 3 years look like. And so the next 6 years is going to be even more ridiculously advanced.
Yeah.
To the point where we're now going to have, AI avatars that are going to be impossible to recognize as artificial when presented in kind of 2 dimensions, like we're presenting one another to. And then that kid is going to be asked to go to some post, education path, college, trades, some other occupation, and spend another however many years out of the workforce. And then they're going to be doing all that to chase some sort of piece of paper, diploma, degree for an entry-level job that may not exist. I mean, that in 10 years' time, and by the time they come out of college, they're going to be given access to an entry-level job that
Doesn't exist.
In 10 years' time will have been easy to replace. That the value that they would have delivered as that 22-year-old kid in 10 years' time has been replaced by technology simply and cheaply, to the point where hiring one kid would be a mistake by any organization, just an economic mistake. It would just not be a good business decision to hire this human to do this thing that this digital thing does for effectively free. So what do we do there? I mean, how do we help these? Like, is there an alternate path where that kid doesn't necessarily need? Could you see an alternate path where there is another way for that kid to get the skills that they may need to get the jobs that they ultimately could find beneficial to them economically earlier? I don't know. I mean, or we're just going to have to wait for the school systems, the bureaucracies, the boards of education, and the kind of larger governmental to kind of wake up? Because I feel like they're just ill-equipped to move at the speed that this is moving at.
I share your concern. public school moves at a glacial pace. We are ill-equipped. Public school in America moves incredibly slow. It and there's lots of reasons for that. And I think for a kid like that, I think their biggest attribute and thing that's going to make them successful is their ability to continue to learn and have grit, which is these are those soft skills, right? You were talking about.
Grit's a good
Um,
one.
to continue to grapple with the next thing, to be able to learn what's new and what's next, to upskill. I'm seeing lots of opportunities for people to earn and upskill and earn certificates that are not at a university with businesses, and it costs money, but it's not the cost of a university credit. You can get on third parties that are companies that are giving certifications, and you can take online courses and get certified in this and certified in that. And you're learning, like LinkedIn courses and Coursera and all these other things. You can learn those skills. So being a scholar, a person who wants to continue, a lifelong learner, right? We want to be lifelong learners. And I think if kids can walk out of school with one thing, and that's always something I've wanted kids to walk out of my classroom with, if you can be a lifelong learner and you're hungry to learn more, you're going to have a job. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's going to be challenging. You're going to have some grit, and you're going to have to work your hiney off to get there. But if you are a lifelong learner, nobody can stop you, and you're gonna be successful. It might take you a while, but you can do it.
I think you're absolutely right. And so the question is, how can you teach that mindset? How do you teach that mindset? Or more to the point, how do you make learning so, and this is where maybe AI actually is a value in that it can personalize the education or the learning to the point where it's so relatable that it becomes this kind of, muscle memory for the kids, because how they're learning, or the frame through which they're learning, is relatable enough for them that it finally clicks in, and they're like, it's an insatiable interest for me.
There has to be some sort of incentive. Like there has to be the buy-in. Students have to have a buy-in. Like, why am I learning this thing? Why do I have to start? Because if they don't have buy-in, they're not going to learn anything, right? I don't want to learn how to do this because it's not interesting to me. The end goal is not what I want, whatever. So when they have the buy-in, they can learn whatever they want, and they can get it. And I think AI is a really great way to do that. It's a powerful learning tool. I use it to learn all the time. You can go into learning mode on a lot of these LLMs. You can be like, I don't get it. Tell me in a different way. I still don't get it. Tell me in another way. Create flashcards. Make a learning plan for me. Quiz me. You can do all this stuff. It's incredibly powerful. Motivating students, motivating adults. Those are challenging things, right? Being motivated to learn and go for it. If you can find the answer to motivate every single person, let me know. But it's, if somebody has the motivation to learn something, they can use AI to make them incredibly powerful in learning, and knowledge is power. And so they can use it, and they can be an incredibly powerful person in their own learning with AI.
So what do you say to the other side? So, that's the story for the kids, try to find your passion, try to get that trigger to kick in around lifelong learning, and maybe technology or certainly great teachers can do that. What do you say to the other side, the school committee, the Board of Education, the bureaucracies that exist? It's almost like they're paralyzed. It feels to me like, and we see this in technology all the time. We see this with companies, large companies that are literally paralyzed. They don't want to buy anything because they don't know whether the next great thing is just around the corner, because everything's changing so fast. So what do you say to these glacial decision makers around what they should be thinking about and how they should be considering, revamping their approach?
I would say have a bias towards action. That doesn't mean you have to be running, but you need to be moving. Whether it's walking, have a bias towards action. You need to be doing something because you can't stand still. the next best thing. There's always going to be a next best thing, right? There's always going to be cheaper, better, faster, shinier, or whatever. Then you can change. You can make a different decision next year when the renewal comes up. You can always do something different. You can always change your mind, but have a bias towards action, because standing still is not an option anymore.
So just in your own experience, do you see the kind of leadership of these school systems with that mindset at this point?
Yes and no. There are some school districts who have leadership that are that have that bias towards action, that are really making movement, that have really forward thinking superintendents who are driving, technology advancement, who cautiously, with, implementation plans and guardrails and policies and procedures, and they know it's not perfect. They know they're going to have to make some changes, but they're really showing that bias towards action and moving forward in a cautious way, but they're still moving. And then we're also seeing districts that are like, ban AI, don't do anything, slam on the brakes, we're not going to touch it. It's too scary, it's too dangerous. And that's just not, district leadership. That's school boards, which also help, are part of the decision-making processes and how school districts are run as well. So it's the whole spectrum and everything in between. But I think if we do nothing, it's a huge disservice to students and to staff, and it's already happening. So in those districts where leadership is choosing to do nothing, then you're creating this underground black market kind of thing happening, which is I would argue is more dangerous than being like, okay, we're going to step forward, we're going to take some cautious step forward, we're going to step forward. So that black market underground thing is way more dangerous than taking cautious steps forward.
Yeah, I mean, denial is just not a strategy. I mean, you can't just sit back and pretend like this is not going to happen and that it's not going to become. It's like everything else. It's like the idea that you can somehow keep your kid from eventually having a screen in their face. It's like, it's just not negotiable. It's going to happen. And so,
Right.
so what do you say to, I mean, as we kind of wind things up, I mean, what advice, let's get it down to a little more molecular level here. What advice do you give parents at this point who are, maybe a little unfamiliar with this new fancy technology? Maybe they've heard about it. Maybe they've seen, an Instagram post about ChatGPT. Maybe they've even played with it a little bit or seen the Google, AI results and are getting familiar with it. But they have little kids. They have young kids, and those kids, their job for the next 10 or 15 years is to try to get that kid prepared for them to launch. What do you say to those parents in terms of how to think about this?
Educate yourself. There are tons of free resources out there to educate yourself about how to raise your kids in this technology inundated world that we live in. Common Sense Media has a ton of free resources, AI AI for Education. There's so many free resources out there. There's podcasts, there's card talking points, flashcards. I mean, there are tons of resources. Give it a search on TikTok or Instagram, whatever your favorite social media platform is. Take that 1 hour scrolling time that you're scrolling before you go to bed, and how do I teach my kids to be safe on technology? How do I teach my kids to interact with AI? Educate yourself and learn, and then talk to your kids. Have a conversation and talk to your kids. That's the biggest thing. Educate yourself and have a conversation with your kids.
Like I say, the next, I would say, 5 years are going to be absolutely wild. And it's amazing how quick kids grow, having had my kids grow, and to think back at like how quickly that went by.
Yeah.
And then they're out and they're making it happen. And you marvel at who they become, and you start to see things that you might have had an influence on that you kind of are like, well, they're pretty good. I like them. I not only love them, but I kind of like them. They're good kids. If you're lucky, like, and so, but you can't you just until you've gone through it, you can't. If I'm speaking to the younger parents now, you just can't understand how quick it. Sometimes it feels like I can't take it anymore, or I got to go to the garage and build something, or whatever
Yeah.
it is. We got to get out of this restaurant because they're all about to lose their. But it goes by so quick, and they are
Mhm.
all of a sudden out there, and
Yeah.
everything you do, every day you spend, every decision you make is going to have an impact. And so,
Yeah.
and what is happening now can feel overwhelming, but
It is. As a parent of an almost 3-year-old, she turns 3 next week. I grapple and feel these with these decisions and feel these decisions deeply. And the things that are happening now, I think about what the future is going to look like for my daughter and what her school is going to look like when she starts kindergarten in a couple years, and what middle school and high school is going to look like. And I probably think about it more than I should, just given what I do for a living. And there's some amazing things that I think about, but then I also think about all the scary things and what ifs. And so, yeah, I grapple with what it's going to look like and how fast it goes and how fast she's changing and how fast the world is changing and what kind of world is she going to live in and what kind of education is she going to have. So I don't have all the answers, can't predict the future, but I like that we're having these conversations, and I like that you guys are doing the work that you're doing so that we're being aware and talking about it. That's good.
yeah, it's gonna be a wild ride, and we want to be certainly hosting those conversations. So, Courtney, thanks very much. I know you've been
Mm.
on other events that we've done. We will most definitely have you, if you'll have us on
Yeah.
future panel discussions. But thanks very much for spending some time today to
No, it's-
talk with me in this human
yeah.
conversation.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.